Good morning, it's Evelyn of the Modern Needle, and I want to show you how to make a sweater or a cardigan. And I'm recreating this is the second time I did this pattern, and it's called um, Pretty with Jeans by Stephanie Lodwin. It is on Ravelry. And what had originally attracted me to this pattern here is that it has these cutouts. They're almost like the old baseball shirts that you used to be able to buy. And they're just very flattering. I'm 5'3" and I'm kind of round. So I thought that this would be a really perfect fit. It is on Ravelry. It's $7. She has a sale going on right now, and the pattern is really well written. This is my version of it here, this first one. And as you can see, it just has a wonderful fit. I added a pocket, which is not in the original pattern. However, I really liked it, and I always need a pocket for Kleenex, or maybe the phone, or whatever. Here you can see the side split a little bit better on mine, but I thought I had a picture of the back. Here is the side and the back, and it's just a really well thought out pattern. And I thought I'll share with you some of the tricks and tips that I have for this pattern, or any pattern really, that gets knit from the top down or bottom up. So you start at the top here before you add the collar, and you have to add your place markers where you increase for the raglan sleeves. And this is knit back and forth, so I knitted on a circular needle back and forth. And you increase every second row for the raglan increase, and then you increase for the V neck and to make the side wider. So my tip number one is you put in your markers. I have a row marker at the beginning of my knitting all the time, because every 8th row I needed to increase for the front to make the front bit bigger. Then I have a marker here where I need to increase on the right and on the left for the sleeves. Sorry. I have a row marker here, and I have a marker where I increase for the sleeves, because this bit here is the sleeves. This is the back. There is another marker here and another marker to start sleeve number 2. That's a lot of markers, and then you always have to check, like, do I need to increase to the right or to the left, like meaning right or left leaning, and does that even matter? Yes, it matters. This is a right leaning increase, and you can see that when I use the bar in between to increase, actually I'll show it to you on the red because you can see it better, that it gets pulled to the right. The front leg of that increase bar gets pulled to the right so that it mimics a right, or that it is a right leaning increase. And here the bar gets pulled to the left, which means it's a left leaning increase. If I would reverse those two, it would feed into this one stitch that doesn't get increased in the middle here. So that is important. But how do you remember which way is what? So if you think this here is a cardigan, so let's do this. for a minute, and then I'll turn it around because it gets knitted this way. So this here is my cardigan. If you were to have a sweater, this would be closed right here. So I start my knitting here. The increases for the front lean to the right. It always leans into the main body, whether it's the main body of the front or the sleeves or the back. So if I'm working on the front bits, it leans towards the middle of my front. So the increases for to make my front wider on the cardigan, they lean to the right. And then I have a marker here to indicate where my sleeves are. If I'm on the right side of the marker, the increase leans to the right because it leans into the main body. So I have two right leaning increases because I'm working on a cardigan. If you would be working on a sweater, this would be a combined piece. You only have one increase that leans to the right. Then I slip my marker and I knit one, and then I do my second increase. The reason why they knit one in between, if you stack the two make ones, you actually get a little bit of a hole or an eyelet, which in this case here, you actually don't want. If it is a design feature and you want it, you can stack your increases one to the right and one to the left. But be aware that it does create a little bit of an eyelet or a hole. So I knit one, then increase one to the right, knit one, or slip my marker and then knit one. And now we're at the second increase. So I'm on the left side of the marker. The increases lean towards the sleeve. So I'm on the left side of the marker. I do a left increase. Again, you can see that the increase here leans to the left, and you can see it again better in the orange that they are leaning to the left, which is this bar here. This is my increase, and you can see that it leans to the left all the time. Then I get to the other side of the sleeve or the end of the sleeve, and again, here is my marker. I'm on the right side of the marker. I will knit an increase to the right. Have a right leaning increase. Slip my marker or knit one and then slip the marker. And now I do my second increase. I'm on the left side. I'm on the back now and everything leans into the back. So I need to lean into the back. That's a left leaning increase. As you can see here, all of the bars go to the left. I knit my stitches in between. I get to the second sleeve. Here is my marker. I'm on the right side of the marker, so I lean it to the right. I knit one, slip the marker, and now I'm at the left increases, or follow the pattern, but you're on the right or on the left of your marker. If I'm on the right, I lean my increase to the right. If I'm on the left, I lean it to the left. I'm leaning them now into the sleeve, so I do my left leaning increase, whether you do an invisible or you pick it up out of the bar. Knit my stitches. Now I'm here at the right and I lean it, I'm here at the marker and on the right side of the marker, I lean it to the right. I slip my marker and I lean that increase to the new increase to the left. And then I have a front increase, which also goes into the front body. I lean that one to the left as well. And you can see that here you have very clean increases. On the front of my cardigan, I know that I will have to pick up stitches for my ribbon band. So because I use the knotted edge, which means I wrap the yarn, if I'm doing Sorry, I'll show you here. I'm at the garter stitch portion, and I want to wrap the yarn on the sides here. My yarn is on this side here. I ended my row knitting, but instead of putting and I leave my yarn in the back. So when I come back around, the yarn wraps from the back right around. It wraps from the back to the back once I turn it. So here is where this wrap happens. It is right here. Now I have the yarn in the front, but in order to do my first knit stitch, I will bring the yarn to the back to make my first knit stitch. So I'm a bit buggered up here. I'll knit a couple of stitches so that you can see. So here is my new wrap, if you can see that. I'll undo this because so that it's the work is flat when I show you. Then I get to the sleeves, and it says to pull my sleeves onto a cord, a barber cord, or one of the knitting cords or whatever. I have so many circular needles that I pick one that is either a smaller gauge than what I'm knitting. I'm knitting with a 5mm needle. This here is a 3mm needle. And I pull my stitches onto a knitting needle. So when I come back, all I need to do is pick up my sleeves down here and knit right off of the needle. I do the same here. If I am afraid that that this pulls through or something, I might elasticize these guys together, or I'll put the silicone beads at the end of it. But in here, it's not a case. The cords are long enough and nothing's going anywhere. So I pick up my stitches, and this has a slight A-line. So again, if I'm on the right side of my stitch marker, I make an increase that leans to the right. If I'm on the left side of my stitch marker, I do an increase that leads to the left. And if you're a bit of a round-bellied person like I am, this slight A-line gives you a really cool fit. Now, this is the second time that I have made this pattern, and I put a pocket into, once I got here, I put a pocket into the front bit. The first time that I did it, I knitted it with a sport weight yarn, what the pattern had called for, and I knitted it in a 2X. But I really wanted to have a heavier jacket, and I wanted to try it out. So I made it with a heavier yarn. So this here was my first bit. And I kind of put my arms down, and wherever they align, I put my pocket. However, I knitted the pocket too long, as you can see here, because the decreases in the front here that give you this shape here. So instead of reopening it or cutting out the pocket, what I could have done is I could have cut the pocket and then just with a sewing machine zigzagged it. Or like like picking up an afterthought heel, I could have, because this here is knitted on this side here. If I pull the pocket out, it's a knit stitch. What I could have done is I could have just picked up the right leg of each one of these stitches here, on both sides. The pocket lines like this, and I tacked it down so it doesn't flop around, but it is knitted like this. So when I came down here, I decided where I wanted my pocket to be, and I just knitted that flap back and forth. I used a different color yarn because why not? And it will sit like this. Once the jacket is done, it will just sit like this. Just like this. From the top down. So I could have done that, and I could have cut off the excess and then just use a Kitchener stitch to combine these two rows. This pocket here, I knitted in garter rib. I started it off in garter rib, not thinking. But it gives it a bit of weight. I didn't want to pull it back, and it gives it a bit of weight to the pocket. So it stays nice and flat anyways. And I will sew the sides closed here and then just attach it to the front flap once I get to it. So on the first one, I just put down my arm and I figured, okay, so this is kind of where I want to have the pocket, but I forgot about, or I didn't really forget about it, but I didn't really know how this incline was going to be, and that of course it's going to cut off my pocket, or the pocket is going to hang out over this decline here, not incline, which I didn't think about, but obviously I didn't want that. So I just kind of folded it in and sewed it this way, and it works fine. It gives me a little bit of a wider pocket. However, if I put my phone in it, it'll fall out. So I thought on cardigan number 2 of the same kind, I need to have a little bit of a bigger pocket, which I did here. And instead of putting it more to the side of where my hip resides, I put it in from the front sides here, a little bit closer to that front. And I kind of centered it a little bit. I think this here is 15 stitches and this is 17 stitches to where the pocket starts. The pocket itself, I made 30 stitches here, and I think maybe 20 stitches here. I should have centered it. I should have started the pocket maybe here. There's a couple of things that I forgot to take into account. Number one, there will be a wider bend in the front. That's kind of my closure. And I didn't put buttons in mine once I picked it up, but we'll talk about that in a minute. So it's not right to the front of my body. I mean, there will be another bend that's kind of this wide here. So when I put my arm straight down, it'll still work. So knitting from here on down, that just works. I picked my stitches, I knitted them back and forth, and then just folded up my knitting yarn was over here. I started with a new color and knitted it, and I left myself a longer tail. I thought it was longer. On the other side it might be longer, so that I can sew this up with this tail and just do a couple of tacking stitches so that it doesn't flop around, or when the cardigan is open, it doesn't go anywhere. So I just tacked it down here, as you can see. I haven't knitted this bit yet, so I can't do it just yet. So what I wanted to do when I came back over here, because this was also knitted on a shorter DPN back and forth on a 5mm, same gauge as this. What what I wanted to do when I finished, I wanted to finish over here and then just slide the needle to the other side and knit over here. That would have stacked two knit stitches on top of one another, but it would have not mattered because I'm coming down this way, and it would have not mattered if I have two knit rows facing here, because the pocket is, even though it's not closed, because of the weight that pulls it down here, it kind of looks like this. So it would have not made a difference at all. But once I got knitting and I was watching TV, and then once I came from here where the knitting yarn is, and I just knitted this right off the needle and then continued with these stitches over here. So I just knitted it back in. It worked out really well. But a few minutes later, I thought, oh, dang. I wanted to leave one of the threads over here so that I have a thread over here to clean it up and a thread over here. In hindsight, it doesn't matter because I didn't really leave a long thread here. So this was probably not going to be enough to whip stitch this closed and tack it into the sweater. But whenever I can avoid starting and finishing new yarn tails that I need to weave in, I will do that. And if I sacrifice a half a row or a quarter of a row, I will also do that. The width of the blocks in my colorway, I often buy one skeins of something in the same yarn weight and I put them together. So I just wanted to have block stripes. But I knit it right until I had no yarn left. So this is a whole skein of yarn. The orange is a whole skein of yarn. The gold is the only, when I put the colors together, because this is a brighter color, I wanted it more over the chest area and not over the belly area, because that pops out on its own without me having to call attention to it. And because this is rather bright, I use that block, that color block, higher up in the body versus the belly. And then down here, it actually didn't matter. By the time I get down here, this is more my hip area anyways. So this is not a big thing. Plus I'm changing to the garter stitch bit for down here. And at first I thought, well, maybe I will leave the garter stitch off and knit right straight to the bottom. However, the garter stitch is actually a really smart way to disguise that we're actually having short rows down here. Once I have my 10 garter ribs, I start my short rows. And if I turn this cardigan around this way, I come from I come from this side here, and I will knit short rows in here first. So my what is that? My left front will get the short rows with the garter stitch first. And if you do the short rows in the garter stitch, you can do the wrap and turn and you don't need to pick up anything, because the garter stitch hides that there are short rows in there. So you don't have to do any double stitches. It won't look funny. The stitches won't shift. You simply don't see it in the garter. So I'm pretty sure that this is why Stephanie decided to use garter stitch in this area. Plus, the garter stitch gives you an added squishiness and a bit of a denser fabric, which really aids to the weight and the aesthetic of the sweater. So you knit your short rows here, then you come back this way, and of course you will combine all of these stitches here, and then we do the garter stitch short rows in the middle of the back. We do our short rows here, combine all of the stitches again, and go to the other front, and then again do the same thing. And then we do a few rows that are all together from one side to the other. I don't remember if it was a garter stitch edge on the original sweater or not, but I used an I-cord. Sorry, I meant to say I-cord. I used an I-cord to get from the one side to the other. And then I left the I-cord stitches here so that I could do the I-cord over here. Actually, that's not what I did, but that's what I'm going to do. Once this is done, leave the live stitches of the I-cord, because that will become the edge. Here it is, the bottom. But once you turn it this way, it'll become the edge stitches of your ribbing for your front placket. So you pick up all of these stitches, and this is where that edge came in that I knitted, the wrapped edge, because I will show you. Let's have a look. I want to have a smaller needle. This one. Okay, I have a smaller sock needle here. So when I need to pick up all of my edge stitches, I can just go in and pick up the wrap. This is rather easy. You can do 10 at a time or 20 or all of them, whatever you like. It is rather easy. I will show you maybe in the gold or in the orange. So pretend I picked up all of the purple and everything up to here. You can just, sorry, I'll flip it over a little bit. So when you look at it on the top, here is your wrapped edge. You can just pick it up. You can pick up this wrap here or the top wrap. It does not matter. I usually pick up the top wrap. You're picking up one wrap for every 2 stitches. Now, normally the formula when we knit is you pick up 3 stitches for every 2 rows, because your stitch is wider than it is tall. So we don't have square stitches. So when I knit it, I will knit 2 and then make 1, which in my case I'm going to knit 2, make a yarn over, knit 2, make a yarn over, knit 2, make a yarn over. And then when I come back and I knit them, I will knit the yarn over through the back loop so that I cross them on the bottom so that it zips it right up. But of course you could pick up the bar in between, one of the bars in between, and that can become your extra stitch. With the legs crossed, you would go through the back loop or if I pick it up like this, I would go through the back loop to fix, to kind of give that stitch a twist so that it doesn't stick open. This first row you can knit through the back loop once you get to the other side, or you can just knit them regular with the legs open. I don't really think that it matters a whole lot, and I've done these wraps many times. Here I believe I crossed them. So I went through the back loop because you can see that this stitch here is twisted. So the back leg, you can see a little X here. Let me see if I can show it better here. You can see that it is an X in the stitch. It lays in front where the other stitch comes in behind. So I did knit them through the back loop, but your pickup edge is really smooth and clean. You can see it right here. It is not bulky at all. I must have cleaned up a thread in this seam here. It is not bulky, it's flat. I've worn this cardigan here for the last month a lot. It's not blocked yet. And I really love it. So I wanted, like I said before, I wanted to get rid of some of my one ball wonders here and put them together. Plus I wanted to have it a bit heavier. So in this particular version that I haven't gotten to yet with a ribbing, once I have the 3 stitches here from my I-cord, and here they're kind of zipped together, but I would pick them back up. Even if this is the cast on edge of my I-cord, I will show you. I would go through the I-cord like this and pick up my stitches. So when I come to this edge here, I picked up the right leg of each one of these stitches here, and I would just use those 3 as my wrapped I-cord here when I come back turning my work. And then this here, the edge of it is just a regular I-cord cast off that goes all the way around. I'm not going to kid you, there is a ton of stitches here, but the I-cord just cleans it up and gives it a little bit of a professional finish. The other reason why I used the formula of knit 2, pick up 3, knit 2, pick up 1, like the 3 stitches to every 2 rows, is very often you see on jackets where the front kind of pulls up a little bit, and I didn't want that. I don't mind it bowing out a little bit or curving out on the bottom, but I really didn't want it to pull up, especially because I do have a belly, and if something pulls up in the front, it makes it look like my belly is making it pull up, which means I'm too fat, which I am, but I don't need to advertise that for anybody that hasn't noticed that I have a belly. So I don't really want that pulling up. So I rather have it come down a little bit than the other way. One other thought that I have on any sweaters or cardigans or whatever, which is, I don't know if that ever happens to you, but you knit something and then you think, oh, that doesn't look like nice knit stitches. What happened here? I have my knit stitches, and I have this kind of barber pole. Like I have the right leaning one is correct, but the left is kind of like a barber pole going in. How did that happen? And the way that that happens is the twist of the yarn. So normally I don't pay attention to it because I actually don't mind either way. You can have a Z twist, which goes like this, Z, which means that the yarn twists this way, or you can have an S twist, which means when you have the yarn like this, the twist goes, let me see, this way. And when you look at the yarn, I can show you this here, you can see that it is twisted. I'll bring it in closer. No, that was the other way. Okay. You can see it is twisted this way. So if I were to make an S, it's twisted to the right, which means if I loosen it a little bit, you can really see which way does it twist. This is twisting to the right, and the right is the knitter's twist. So when they ply the yarn, they twist it to the right, which means it is an S twist. So when you knit, you get a beautiful knit stitch, which is your V when you knit it. Where the other one has a line here and then just the other half of the V. But I'm not sure why with this. See, it kind of wants to, it kind of shows like I have a barber pole here, which is the left side of the stitch. And I kept thinking like, what the heck? It becomes maybe more prominent when you mix the different yarns. So you're not mixing the different yarn weights, but you may be mixing the twist, where this shows up like a Z twist. They're all S twists because they're all from the same yarn dyer, which is Feisty Fibers in Toronto. And she has gorgeous yarns. I test knit for her before. Her yarns are just lovely, all of them. So this is all one yarn base. However, there must be an extra twist or something on it, because sometimes I'm not sure, do I see the knit stitch, the V's, or do I see the barber pole on the left? It doesn't matter to me one way or the other, but as a practice, I do want to look for it because I want to get better at spotting it and seeing it. Depending on what it is that you knit, or if you're relatively new knitter or whatnot, you may not know that. But because I use the one Skein Wonders, I was paying attention that how does that look together? A knitter may spot it. Will a novice spot it? I'm not really sure. So that was something that I had paid attention to. The other thing that I contemplated when I was making these bigger ribbons, like these big blocks of, whenever they finished, whether that was mid-row, here it was under the arm, I would start off, it wasn't under the arm, I can tell you exactly where it finished. It finished wherever it wanted to. So here, it was in the middle here. This is where it finished. An untrained eye will not see that it finished here. And I wove in the yarn as I went along, so that's why the one looks elongated. Once this is blocked, you will no longer be able to see it. However, you can see that the new yarn started here in this row, because I'm coming from this way, of course. So you can see that little jog of yarn. That doesn't bother me. An untrained eye is not going to see this. Once this is blocked out, it's no longer a thing. And I don't end up with, I don't know, threads of whatever many grams that I can't use anywhere else. what else did I want to talk about making this or any other sweater? I had thought about using lace weight yarn in between here. So I had found, because I like the Elton sweater. The Elton sweater is from Jorge Locatelli, and she uses a fingering weight block of merino and then a fingering block of mohair or lace or whatever. And I do have quite a bit of mohair. This is, I believe, a hobby yarn that I had picked up at one point because I like knitting the felted mittens, or sorry, the lined mittens. And but I decided that I really like the Elton sweater, but I love the fit of this. So what if I make block collars of merino wool, which is a solid, and then the lace weight, I should say, or the thinner weight. What you have to pay attention, this one here would have worked because I can knit it with a size 5 needle, and the picture of it will not be smaller than the merino. So I'm not going to have yarn that goes in, like I have a block of yarn knitted in a block of knitting fabric knitted in yarn, and then I get to the merino or the lace weight, alpaca or angora or whatever it is, the fuzzy stuff, and then all of a sudden my knitting work pulls in like this. So I would have to make a swatch to see how it works. With this yarn here, I don't think I would have necessarily swatched how they look together, because very often I do this swatch as I go along. This pattern here is written for a 3.5 millimeter or 3.75 millimeter weight. And this is a 5 millimeter weight. It is a worsted yarn. So my last cardigan that I showed you, the gold one, was knitted in a size 2XL. However, when I looked at the sizes, when you start off at the neck, the difference between a small and an extra large or 3X, those differences are not tons of stitches. So I thought maybe I need to knit extra large or a 1X, depending on how this plays out. So I picked the stitches for the neck for the extra large. And then I kept measuring it, not around my neck, but according to the sweater that I had already knitted. And I measured it below the collar, just where the stitches were. And I made sure that it was kind of this size going around. And I use this as a guide for many things. Now, I could have used it on my neck as well, but where I was sitting in the way that I was knitting, I would have had to get up, and it was just easier to do this. I would have had to look in the mirror and whatever. I was kind of too lazy to that. I was just in the knitting mode. So you can do either or. And then I could have adjusted it at that time, doing more increases for the sleeves if I wanted to gear it to the 1X, which I think was only 4 stitches difference in the cast on anyway, so it would have not made a huge difference going forward. Now in this yarn, 4 stitches is 1, 2, 3, 4, so maybe an inch. That is a big difference, but because the increase rate remains the same, you increase 2, 4, 6, 8 stitches across, and then when you increase for the front, which is a different rate of increase, you increase 2, but it's the same for all of the sizes. So that actually didn't matter. When I was done with my increases, the only other thing that I needed to watch is I needed to make sure that this right here, that I was going to be as long as the one on the 3.75. And it kind of worked out that it was. At first, I thought, well, maybe I just need to knit 2 or 4 rows without any increases down here, and just so that I can get the length from the neck to the armhole, which I didn't really need to do that after all, because once I measured it, I had enough. It was the same length. Now, if I would have had to do that, that would have not been a problem at all. I could have done that. It's down by the arm. Nobody sees that there is no more increases. And that would have been fine in order to get the length. The adjustment on the body, I had to knit by, not by rows or anything. I had to knit by inches. So it was 9.5 inches from the armhole to where I start the ribbing that happens just before that arched, the short rows start. So that was okay. And I'll see if this is going to come out significantly longer or not. Now, when I block this, the weight of it will block it a bit longer than the sport weight would have. Number one, they're completely different yarns and completely different twists. This sweater here, I think I use 3.5 hanks or balls of yarn, 100 grams. So this is 350 grams. This is already 100, 200, 300, 400. I think it'll be more than a pound. It'll be maybe 600 grams by the time the body is finished, including the front placket. I did not include buttonholes because I tend to not use my cardigans that way. And because this is heavier, it will drape different and it will block a little bit different. So just the weight of the yarn will pull down the stitches a bit more. The other thing to think about is it is knitted from the top down or bottom up. Doesn't in this case doesn't matter, but the stitches here are knitted sideways. So stitches stretch this way. When we block, they tend to not block out a whole lot this way because they get distorted. So we don't aggressively block this way a whole lot. And the garter it's more elastic this way than it is this way. Is that true? Yeah, maybe the same. So I'll see how it blocks out with the front blocker knitted this way versus this way, which is the way that this is knitted. So that was in the heavier yarn, what I had thought about. One thing that I'm not sure about is because I have rheumatoid arthritis and I hate it's a nerve ending autoimmune disease, not to be confused with osteoarthritis. I may not knit full sleeves on this. I may just knit the placard on here because I'm hot and cold. I need layering pieces anyways, and very often in the wintertime I have an undershirt and then a long sleeve t-shirt on. Sometimes an undershirt, a t-shirt, and a long sleeve t-shirt, because my arms, except for my hands, are never as cold as my body gets. So my core temperature is often cold. So I may just, to battle the weight a little bit, just leave this and have it like a slip over, an open slip over, which that is more my thing anyways. I might put sleeves on it. I'm undecided. If you watch my knit and chat, you will see what the future Evelyn decides, which I'm not really sure what to do about just yet. However, I do know that this is not my last layering piece. So for me, I knitted many sweaters for myself. However, I prefer cardigans to anything. So that's what I decided. And I decided that I'm going to use a lot of my one skeins, whether they're fingering or DK or worsted. And I'll just adjust it I'll play with the gauge and adjust it. And I mean, knitting a sweater in an extra large when you're a bigger girl is kind of nice because I don't have 400 and some odd stitches. I only have like 300 and some odd stitches, which is a bonus for me. And it's a pretty easy way to figure it out. Now, if if you want to be more scientific about it or more mathematical about it, if this is how your brain works, or you need to be more exact about it, you do your swatch and you figure out, you do your swatch, you measure it over the 4 inches and then break it down into 1 inch. What would it be? How many stitches do you really get to the 1 inch? But you measure it from the 4 inch and then divide it by 4, just so that you are more exact. Then if you know what your chest circumference is or whatever your size circumference is. So let's say let's say this is an inch. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3, 4. I might get 4 stitches here to an inch. 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, that's 4 stitches. Yeah. To an inch. If I know, let's say, I have 20 inches circumference that I need, I know 20 times 4 is 80 stitches. I would know that I need to have 80 stitches going around. Then I would go to my pattern and I would see which size comes the closest to the 80 stitches, and that's what I would use. If I wanted snug, I would go to the size that's closer. So let's say the pattern has 83 stitches for whatever size, and then 87 or 88 for the next size up. If I wanted snug, I would go to the 83. If I wanted loose, I would go to the 87. That's kind of how I would figure out which way do I want to go, if that makes sense at all. That's kind of like an easier and a more accurate way than I do it. I've been doing it for a long time, and I don't have flops very often because I do tend to notice that this is not quite the way that I want to go by the time I'm finished. So one other thing that I had thought about is I wanted to have a cohesiveness in the sweater, not just blocks. So I was thinking really hard, how do I get my front placard to be the color, one color? So if this is here gold, I want the front placard to be gray because I do have 2 full hanks of that. And I don't know, I was thinking about this way too complicated. I thought, oh, I can do the bobbins and I'm going to go to the end of the edges there. And then my placards I'm just going to knit that in that and cross the yarns in the back. And then I actually couldn't figure it out. So I went to bed, and the next morning when I woke up, I thought, first thing. I thought, I don't know why I worried about that because I'm actually picking up the stitches this way anyways. So knitting this in gray is not a big deal. I just pick it up and knit it in gray. And I have one hank for this dark brownish, grayish black. And I believe it will get me through the whole bum area. And then once I'm finished with the bum area, I will add the gray in as the last few rows and then do the placard in gray, which is the collar, the whole collar bit with the front placard will be in this gray here. And that is going to tie my colors together and unify everything. So all of this hard thinking that actually went nowhere was simplified. And that's very often the case. When I think about something and I make it complicated first, and then by the time I'm finished thinking it through, whether I need some space in between or not, I need to trim it way down because it gets too complicated and it doesn't need to be. And it will be the same for the arms. If I make, I will just do the rib here if I'm going to do the shorter sleeves with an I-cord without decreases. And I don't like anything tight on me anyway. So even in the gold sweater that I had already knitted on the arms, I did not decrease because I thought that way I can have something under it and it's not going to bunch up or whatnot. And I didn't want to do the rib here, so I did a broken rib for the arm, which is not as elastic as a knit one, purl one, or the most elastic rib is knit two, purl two. But I ended up with an I-cord and I can still pull it up over my arms so that I can pull it up if I want to. Again, this bit then I would just do gray, or I will block the arms in color blocking and then just do the gray on the sleeve. So that'll be too easy. And I'm pretty sure I covered everything that I did want to say about these knitting hints about knitting back and forth. When I was getting to this point here where I had to do, I already took off the sleeves, and the increase for my A-line and the increase for my front were every 8th row you increased. But coming out of the arm increase to the front increase, they didn't quite match. So I knitted I would have had to have 2 counters going, which I really didn't want. So I knitted until they were at even. So once I was ready for increasing in the front here, I also increased on the side so that they were on the same counter. And when I have my row increase, when I go row by row, and I do have these, I love the baby elastics for my row counter or for my stitch markers. So I'm going back and forth. So once I come back to the knit side, I move it 1. And when I'm back at the knit side, I move it 1. So each one of those stitches here that are on my thing here. So if the marker would be here, I have 2, 4, 6 stitches. And then my next one would be 8. So this is my increase row. And when I'm on the increase row, I take the marker out and I don't even need to do anything with it. Now these are 2 different needles, 2 different yarns. If I were to come here and I need to increase now, I'll just flip it on my finger. I'll increase, knit to my next stitch marker, and as I'm knitting I can see the marker is here. That's my reminder I'm actually increasing on the right and on the left. I'm knitting to the next marker, right and left. I do my back side, and then when I come back in the front, it'll slip back into the first position, which means I already did one row from the back. And I keep counting this way. If I'm counting in the round, it'll be the same thing, just that it'll be eight rows, not every second row. But I do flip it on my thumb, and then once I'm back here, I knit, and I'll just knit it back in. I don't need to stop. I don't need to do anything. I don't actually touch the marker a whole lot. Even when I flip it, I'll just come in and I'll put in my fingers this way. I take it off, I knit, and put it back on. So I don't really need to slow down for any of that, because I have the marker right on my thumb. Very often I will leave the house with having stitch markers on my fingers, but it'll be just a really good reminder, and I always know where I am when I come back to the knitting. Obviously I don't leave it in increase row. I will do that other row so that the marker can come back into my knitting. Okay, sorry. My little findling here is making an appearance, which is weird. I've not done that before with her on here. But anyways, it's a good way to sign off with her sitting right here. That is all I wanted to tell you about the tips and tricks that I use for keeping my knitting on track. If you have any suggestions or anything that you use, comment and we'll give it a whirl and let you know. Let me know if this helped you or not. If you like my content at all, give me a like, give me a share, follow my channel. Regardless, you have a fantastic day and happy knitting, everybody.